You walk into that meeting room, and something shifts. You can feel it. Your heart does that thing where it speeds up just a little too fast. You sit down, you open your mouth to say something important, and then it happens. Someone talks over you. Or worse, nobody even turns to look at you. And you sit there, holding this thought that actually matters, watching it dissolve into the air while someone else, someone louder, someone who seems to own the room without even trying, takes the conversation exactly where they want it to go. That feeling right there is one of the most quietly painful experiences a professional can have. And if you have felt that, I want you to know this video was made specifically for you. Because here's the truth that nobody in your workplace is going to tell you. Respect in a meeting is not given. It is not distributed fairly based on who worked the hardest or who has the best ideas. It is taken, it is commanded. And the people who command it are not necessarily the smartest people in the room. They're the people who understand something almost nobody ever teaches you, which is how confident communication actually works at a psychological level. And before we go any further, I want to be upfront with you. If you are someone who is serious about transforming the way you show up not just in meetings but in every room you walk into, there is a program linked in the description below this video. Most people will scroll past it. Most people will finish watching, nod along, feel inspired for about 20 minutes, and then go back to the same patterns. The people who actually click that link and look at what is there are the ones who understand that real change requires real investment. So keep that in mind as we go through this together. Now let me paint the full picture of what is actually happening when you feel invisible in a meeting. You have spent time preparing. Maybe you stayed up thinking about the points you want to make. You arrive knowing your material, but the moment you sit down, there is this invisible social hierarchy that activates, and somehow, almost immediately, you can sense where you rank in it. And it is not fair. It has almost nothing to do with your competence. Studies on workplace dynamics consistently show that people form impressions of a speaker's authority within the first 7 seconds of them beginning to speak. 7 seconds. Before you have even finished your first sentence, the room has already made a judgment. So what happens when that judgment goes against you? You start to shrink. Maybe you do not even realize it. Your sentences get shorter. You add more qualifications to your statements. You say things like, "This might not be the best idea, but," or, "I am not sure if this makes sense, but." And every single one of those tiny linguistic apologies chips away at how the room perceives you. It is a feedback loop. You feel less respected, so you communicate less confidently, so you receive less respect, so you feel even smaller. And meanwhile, someone across the table is doing the exact opposite. They are expanding. They're filling silences instead of fearing them. They're speaking with a certainty that makes people lean in without even knowing why. Let me take you into a specific moment because I want you to feel this, not just understand it intellectually. Imagine you are in a meeting where a decision needs to be made. You have a perspective that is genuinely valuable. You start speaking, but your voice does this thing where it goes up at the end of sentences, turning statements into questions without you meaning to. And one of your colleagues, someone who maybe has less insight than you on this particular topic, interrupts. Not rudely, just confidently. They restate something similar to what you were saying, but they say it like a verdict. Flat, certain, grounded, and the room responds to them. Heads nod. The conversation moves forward based on their version. And you are sitting there thinking, that was basically my point. And it was. But delivery became the entire difference between being heard and being overlooked. This is the cost of invisible confidence. Not just the frustration in the moment. The promotions that go to people who are perceived as leaders, even when you have been doing the actual leadership work. The projects that get handed to someone else because they seem more decisive. The salary conversations where you walk in feeling undervalued and walk out having accepted less than you deserve because you could not hold the frame under pressure. These are not small things. These are years of your career. These are compounding losses that, when you add them up over time, represent an enormous gap between where you are and where you could be. Research in organizational behavior has shown that employees who are perceived as confident communicators are promoted on average significantly faster than equally skilled counterparts who struggle with executive presence. The actual skill gap is often minimal. The communication gap is everything. Now let me shift this entirely, because I want you to understand what the other side of this actually looks like. Not as some distant aspiration, but as something that is completely achievable, and that you can begin moving toward right now. When you walk into a room and you carry yourself with genuine, grounded confidence, something changes that is almost hard to describe until you have felt it. People make space for you before you even speak. Not because you are louder or more aggressive, because there is a quality to how you hold yourself that signals something the human brain reads immediately and instinctively as authority. Your posture communicates before your words do. The pace of your breathing affects the pace of your speech. The way you make eye contact, hold pauses, and resist the urge to fill silence out of discomfort, all of this is a language being spoken underneath your actual words. Confident speakers in meetings do something that most people never figure out. They are never in a hurry. Think about that. The next time you watch someone who genuinely commands a room, notice that they do not rush. When they are asked a question, they pause. That pause, which most people would find terrifying, is actually a weapon. It signals that they are not afraid of silence, that they do not need to fill space to justify their presence, that their answer is worth waiting for, and the room waits. Every time. Here is another thing confident speakers do that you can start implementing immediately. They speak in conclusions first. Most people, especially when they are nervous, bury their main point at the end of their explanation. They give all the context first, then the analysis, then finally the point. Confident communicators flip this entirely. They state the conclusion first, then they support it. This is the difference between saying, well, when you look at the numbers from last quarter and consider the seasonal trends and also factor in what the team has been dealing with in terms of resource constraints, I think maybe we should consider shifting our strategy, versus saying, we need to change our strategy. Here is why. That second version is what makes people sit up. That second version is what gets attributed to a leader. Pattern in how your body occupies space matters more than most people are willing to believe. Confident speakers take up physical space deliberately, not aggressively, but they do not fold into themselves. Their gestures are intentional and open rather than closed and defensive. When they lean forward, it is to emphasize. When they lean back, it is to project ease. Every physical signal is working in concert with their words to reinforce a single message, which is, I am certain of what I am saying, and you should be too. Now here is the piece that almost nobody talks about, which is how to handle being interrupted or dismissed without losing your composure or your ground. Because this happens to even the most skilled communicators sometimes. The difference is in the recovery. When someone talks over a less confident person, that person usually just stops. They yield. They wait for the next opening, which sometimes never comes. A confident speaker does something different. They hold. They do not stop mid-sentence just because someone else started talking. They complete their thought. They do it calmly, without aggression, with a tone that is actually warmer and more certain at the same time. And then they say something like, I want to finish that thought, and they do. The room always respects this, not because it is confrontational, but because it is self-assured, and self-assurance is magnetic. There is also a concept around vocal authority that most people underestimate dramatically. Your voice, its pace, its depth, its rhythm, carries an enormous portion of your message. Researchers have found that the actual words we use are a relatively small percentage of how our message is received compared to vocal tone and nonverbal signals. When you slow down, when you let your voice settle into a lower register rather than getting higher with anxiety, when you breathe before you respond rather than reacting immediately, all of it changes how people experience you. They do not just hear different words, they feel a different person. And this is where the transformation becomes real. Because when you stop being the person who leaves meetings feeling overlooked and start being the person who walks out knowing they moved the room, everything downstream changes. Your confidence compounds. Each meeting becomes evidence that you belong at the highest levels. Your career starts accelerating in ways that feel almost mysterious to people watching from the outside, but you will know exactly why. The investment in this specific skill set is not a luxury. It is genuinely one of the highest return investments you can make in your professional life. The cost of not learning this, the promotions missed, the influence not exercised, the years spent being underestimated, far exceeds any investment in learning it. If everything we have covered today resonates with you on a level that feels urgent, which it should, because every meeting you walk into before you have these tools is another opportunity that may not come back. The program linked in the description below this video exists for exactly this reason. I will not tell you to go look at it. In fact, if you feel like you have already got everything you need, do not bother. But if some part of you is sitting here knowing that this is the area that has been quietly holding you back for longer than you want to admit, then not clicking that link is a choice that will cost you significantly more than clicking it ever could. The people who act on moments like this one are the people whose trajectories look completely different a year from now. That is not an exaggeration. That is what intentional transformation actually does.